Move on to item 6.3, motion to approve first reading and introduction of ordinance number 770, establishing an emergency shelter overlay. Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. A bit of background first. In 2012, the council approved the emergency shelter overlay zone ordinance, which basically designates the property at 405 South 4th Street as an area for homeless shelters, consistent with Senate Bill 2. In July of 2013, the city approved the zoning code update, and unfortunately this section was removed. And so we brought that back at the April 15th meeting. The council directed staff to have a discussion with host to address issues related to children and families at the existing shelter. And host has provided policy language related to them on how they deal with minors and families, specifically that the host shelter serves those individuals 18 years or older, and if they're approached by someone who is outside that range, they look for other means of assistance. And so that information is attached to the report. Staff is recommending that this item be reintroduced and adopted by the council with language as it was previously approved.
Any questions for Mr. Andrews?
Okay, sorry. So host came to the city asking our support to purchase the facility. In other words, the city has skin in the game now. And it's incumbent upon this council to make sure that we are comfortable with the manner in which the facility will be run. We have an obligation to protect the public's interests and the public safety of all of the citizens and the clients that would go there. And I strongly believe that leaving this type of opening for future services of families and children poses a very serious public safety risk. Let's put it another way. I am absolutely not comfortable approving an ordinance which is silent on the issue of providing shelter services to individuals under 18 and merely relies on host's policy as it currently stands. As I stated previously, I have a major problem with any motion which would involve housing families or children on the same grounds as homeless individuals, the ones we're speaking about. These are very simply not populations that should be intermingled. I've always said that. This overlay ordinance specifically designates the host property as the city's current homeless zone. We as a council have also made it clear that in the future, we could consider rezoning other properties if there is a demand and need for additional shelter facilities. But since right now, we're really just talking about the host property, I think we need to have that more explicit language in the ordinance prohibiting shelter services to individuals under the age of 18. I would very strongly recommend that we reincorporate that language. At a bare minimum, we need to have explicit language in the ordinance which refers specifically to the host policy language prohibiting services to individuals under the age of 18, and require that hosts bring back any proposed changes to the policy for approval by the city council, not by the city, but by the city council. While it's all well and good that host has a policy that currently prohibits providing shelter services to family and children, it's their policy. And there's nothing in the current ordinance language which prevents hosts from changing that policy at any time. What controls do we have to ensure that the policy isn't just changed whenever host sees fit? Because I don't see any language in the draft ordinance which protects the city in that regard. I mean, when you're dealing with children, you have to have the proper credentials to deal with children. And of course, we would want to know that they had the proper people that were servicing the families those people need to have the proper credentials, and we need to know that as a city. So we need some kind of language in there so that they can't just change it overnight, that we know what's going on and we could protect the citizens that are going to be their clients or citizens around the area. Their policy also states that they do not provide services to individuals younger than 18 at this time, which says to me that they absolutely have plans to revisit the policy. Now, when it was approved originally, it was approved at 18 and over. So I don't understand why it can't stay that way. By the way, they've closed. They weren't able to stay open with the 18 and over group that they were already servicing. So maybe they should concentrate on that group of individuals to see if they can get over those hurdles before they move on to families. There's also the Health and Human Services here in town that helps the families currently. And I've also checked with the schools, and they say that there's currently there's about 80 kids that are homeless that they are servicing and helping through all the services that are available in the county. So it looks like that population has a place to go for services currently. I just feel that host needs to work their way up into that, and they should not, merge the two. We've got people in that segment of the community that have dependency issues on, drug dependencies, alcohol. They have mental health issues, and combining families that are already in a stressful situation because they're homeless with that clientele, I see problems. I see big problems happening, and we need to protect those children. I mean, let's ask the council here or anybody in this room. Now, there was a lot of discussion about what was going on down at North Park, and I ask you, if you were a homeless mother and you had nowhere else to go and you were forced by the county, because we have a facility here now for families, if you were forced to go put your child in a facility that has nothing but 18 and over adults that have problems with mental disabilities, and we need to help that society as well, but they need to be separated because there's too many troubles that can happen in between, and that's where I stand. It's not that I don't want to help host, but you need to grow and show that you can support the clientele that you currently have.
The question I have is for our city attorney. The state often gives municipalities a lot of laws, many of which have a lot of common sense in the sunshine, but sometimes they're just handing down laws that really don't make any sense whatsoever. Regarding Senate Bill 2, yes, it is a mandate, and we have to follow by it. But what is the timeline, and what kind of flexibility do we have to make sure that not only are we complying with what they have, but making sure, as Councilmember Lustgarten is saying, that a lot of the details that may not be reflected in the law, but elements that a city is responsible for, that we're doing the right thing and that we're not being ramrodded into something at the 11th hour because someone is trying to push something.
I don't recall a timeline specifically in the bill.
Okay.
It's let's see, it's about 6-7 years old now.
Okay.
So we're getting there under any analysis, we're getting there, and we think we've complied with what we've proposed before. Regarding the issue of children, which came up previously, when I looked at the bill last time, it was mentioned in the preamble, which is kind of like our whereases in an ordinance. They mentioned how a large portion of the homeless population is very young, but that requirement wasn't in the substance of the legislation itself.
Okay.
So I guess to sum up, it's time to act. The details and involving children, that's your call, policy call, but the time to act is now.
Okay. Thank you.
What is your interpretation of how this exists today? based on, because I think I was the one who originally brought it up, and I know I had asked the folks at Host about it, was that specifically when I think we were looking at providing a loan to them, that it would be 18 and above. And so what is your interpretation of how this exists today? Does it include the children, or is it something that can be interpreted to include the children? Where is the language in there that can be misinterpreted, I guess is my question.
It could be interpreted to include people under 18.
Okay.
Could be, that's true. And I agree with Councilmember Lustgarten. It's a policy call of whether we take Host at their word or not at this point.
Any other questions or comments by council?
And that's why I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just stay with the language of 18 and over, and then when they do decide that they're ready and they want another facility to open for children, then we can help them with that. But, it's not necessary at this point.
Okay, this requires a public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and open that public hearing and invite anybody who would like to comment on this particular item.
Mr. Mayor, council, staff, I'm Rich Kelly. I'm the chair of the board at Host, and I would like to speak in favor of approving the language as submitted by city staff. First, there are some misconceptions that Host has worked to clear up, but some people have clearly not heard what we have said. The simplest is we are not closed. We are not providing overnight shelter at this point. We are providing other services for the homeless in the community. We did not ever anticipate being able to open on a 12-month basis this early in the cycle of having a permanent facility. It was reported in the irrigator that we closed because we did not receive a grant, and that's not accurate. If we had received the grant, we still would have stopped overnight shelter services at that point because the funding of that grant would not have arrived until much farther down the calendar year. And this was just not anything that we had anticipated doing this early on. Host is not absolutely planning on changing any of our policies. We would like to have the possibility open in the future if circumstances change, if somehow Host comes into a few $1 million and is able to do something. We would like to have that not precluded by an ordinance. I believe the ordinance, the way it stands, or the way it's been submitted, is sufficient. There is not, to my knowledge, a city in the state of California that has the 18 and over requirement in their ordinance. I could not find a single example of a city that has included that in their ordinance. I did find a survey done in Orange County of 31 of the 34 cities in Orange County, and the other 3 cities had not yet adopted ordinances. Not a single one of those had the over 18 clause, and several of them specifically said that the ordinance included shelter for families with children. Marin County has put together model language for this, and that does not include the age restrictions of 18 and over. And the city of Berkeley, who I would think would be particularly concerned about the needs of children, if any city in California likely would, does not include that type of language. So I don't see why Patterson needs to stick our necks out and be the only city in the state that's making a restriction. Some other misconceptions. The Center for Human Services, Family Services, the schools, there are a lot of services they provide, but they do not provide shelter. They are in the same position that we are in Host, seeking organizations either outside our community that do provide those resources, or connecting to individuals or organizations that will provide the funding to provide short-term housing. And that's what we've done in the past with individuals or organizations providing money for a few nights at a hotel or finding a shelter that does have facilities for minors and encouraging the family to do that. It's difficult. Most of the people we serve are Patterson people, and they don't want to leave Patterson. They want to stay here because this is where their ties are. This is their home, even though they don't have a house. The ordinance, the way it's written, is quite restrictive, and I believe from my reading of SB2, it is already out of compliance because SB2 requires that you zone with the capacity to serve the entire homeless population, and our ordinance already has a limit of 25, and we know the homeless population in Patterson is much larger than 25. To add an additional restriction when the preface talks about the needs of families and children, even though it's not specifically mentioned in the bill, it seems clear that that's the intent of the program. To add additional restrictions, I think, raises difficulties for the city that could be very expensive in the long run. And that would be sad because those resources should be spent on people in need. So thank you very much for hearing me.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In Berkeley, for instance, that was one of the examples.
Mm-hmm.
The family services that they give, are they mixed with the other 18 and older crowd, the singles that have drug abuse problems and alcohol problems?
I do not know specifics of the shelters.
They're not mixed.
Most shelters have separate facilities. They may be
Exactly.
run under the same umbrella.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying limiting anything. All we're doing is limiting this facility and saying that when you're ready for a family facility, we can set that up too.
There is some confusion in the suggested language that came up, and I believe it was April, that might preclude us from providing any services to minors, meals, anything, and clothing. We don't want to be precluded from being able to serve minors on the property. We understand housing them is not a smart thing, and we do not have any plans to do that. But I think closing the door on that opportunity down the road is inappropriate.
We're not saying that we're going to close that
But
door.
you are.
No, we're not. We're just saying that this one, for one thing, an overlay in the downtown core to make a huge overlay of all homeless area would be really silly on our part, number one, because we're going to put a lot of money into redeveloping downtown right now, and we wouldn't want a huge batch of homeless shelters like a few blocks away from that. That wouldn't be prudent on our part either for the businesses or for
Right.
the neighborhoods around. So what we're suggesting, and what is the law, as far as I understand it, is that we can mix it up. We can choose the host house to be an 18 and over, and then we can choose another home on the other side of Patterson for a family. And also, if you're going to be serving homeless people in one area of the city, what do you do when there's domestic violence? Because then the abuser would know exactly where to go. They would know what part of our city.
I think you're mixing apples and oranges and projecting problems that we don't have. We don't have any chance at this point of providing services for victims of domestic abuse.
I understand
And-
that, but
and-
all I'm
and-
trying to
Let me finish, please.
And I believe that you're making it unnecessarily difficult. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a great city person, but I'm not aware of other zoning in the city that is age specific, that only people of a certain age can live in that area. There may be senior facilities, but that's not a zoning issue. I just don't think this is the appropriate way to deal with this issue.
Okay.
I have a couple questions for you, too, just based on what you said. So
Sure.
first of all, Mr. Kelly and everyone who's involved with Host, you know, my hat's off to you. What you do is admirable work, and I appreciate it. And I know that there's probably not a long list of people waiting to volunteer to help you out. So what you do is appreciative. I think what Councilmember Lustgarten is alluding to is that she just wants to provide an extra layer of protection for the youth, and I believe that your intentions are good on that. So I think that's maybe, I know she's going off into some different tangents and explaining it, but am I understanding you? I think that's at the core of what she's getting to. But just let's set the record straight. So if the irrigator did get it wrong, I would love for you to state right now to the public at large, what hours are you open, and what programs is Host offering currently that could help?
We are offering, how many days? Is 2 days a week, providing the lunches. Our administrative assistant is on the property and able to connect people with other services. We have some clothing and those types of things that are available right now. Toiletries.
So 2 days a week, are they specific days? So if a homeless person were looking,
Tuesday and Wednesday?
no, I heard a no. Do we want to, I just want to set the record straight.
Yeah.
If the record was wrong, let's get it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We would gladly be open, but
And maybe
there's
you can
realities.
communicate with the irrigator, and I'm sure
Yeah.
they would be happy to get the information right, as well as if we can get it out to the public as well on our site. One thing that I see that a lot of people do, whether it's consultants, sometimes if you are talking oranges and apples, we are nowhere the size of Berkeley. So
Yeah.
let's compare us to a city that, oh my goodness, we're not there yet. We're looking at it, but I mean, gosh, we are so
Yeah.
far from Berkeley, okay? None of us are going to see that in our lifetime.
I only chose as an example of probably the most liberal city who would have the most protective policies.
Berkeley liberal, come on.
Not
all right.
saying that we could provide the same services, but if it's not an issue in that climate, it just seems to me this is not the appropriate way. That was the point I was trying to make.
Right, and, okay, and so just going with that, I mean, let's, in all fairness,
Mhm.
let's compare apples to apples
Yeah.
on that, too.
Because they're on the
Let's get that. Understanding where you're coming from, the Center of Human Services, because we don't want to send people there where they can't help. So we're talking about out of compliance. You were talking about that the ordinance is that way for a limit of 25. I believe that the limit of 25 is due to the size of the facility.
But the ordinance requires that you zone with capacity to serve all the homeless,
So,
which we
And-
do not do.
and so what is staff's opinion and the council's opinion on that?
We simply think we're in compliance at this point.
You believe we're in compliance? Okay.
I hope that's an inexpensive belief.
Okay, well, we're just trying to,
Yeah.
let's not threaten
And
each
that-
other.
that's a
I mean,
whole
gosh,
separate
I mean,
issue
the
from
city
this. I
gave
just-
you guys the money to open it up, so
Well, you loaned
let's
us
work.
money.
I know,
Well,
and we did, and
okay.
it was with trying to work with you
Yeah.
guys, so let's
appreciate it.
let's come to a meeting
We
of the
really
minds
appreciate
here,
it.
and let's get this done right with all concerned
Yeah.
citizens involved. So, okay,
And this was originally passed with an 18 and over anyway, and you were fine with it then. But then
No.
I saw articles in the paper where you were starting on phase 2, which was a family suite.
No, we are not starting on that.
But that wasn't, you were talking about that at one point.
We are talking about how if we had an additional $250,000, we could begin that process. That's
I
not
must
going to
have
happen
read the
overnight.
article differently.
Yeah. And there's also often a difference between what is actually said and what gets printed and how people interpret what's printed.
That's
there's-
for sure.
There can be much confusion.
as we're discussing right now, so.
Yeah, yeah. That's why we're here.
So all I'm saying is that we can have families. We can support families in our homeless policy at a later date, and that would be perfectly fine and under the law, correct?
Yeah, at a later date. The conundrum is if you add over the age of 18, they couldn't even do the non-housing services.
Right, but there's
So-
other agencies that are currently doing those services in our city.
But that would mean we would not be able to serve the
Well,
lunches. we
I've
would not
talked
be
to
able
other people
provide
in the city
housing.
that say there are, so.
The city really wanted the meals moved out of the park, and so 2 days a week they are at Host. But if you do that, then Host cannot do that, and you need to find other facilities again, which opens another mess.
Well, and I understand that, and I saw that, a member of Host and I think it was Claudia Smith and a couple of staff members got together because of that problem with the feeding in the parks and everything, and you made some policy about a rotation to feed the homeless. But there was no conversation with the public, and some of those parks are by homes. And so we have to be cognizant of that as well.
And if we move 2 meals a week away from Host, then we are moving 2 meals a week closer to those parks and those homes.
Well, that's a problem that we need to figure out as a city, but the policy needs to be made here on the dais.
Yeah, that's your job.
Right,
And it's also by businesses as well. the parks.
exactly.
Right, and I just want to correct when you had said that the city had made a decision. So the council was not involved with that decision, so that's something that I've addressed with my city
Exactly.
manager. That
Yeah,
was
city
something that was just kind of, whoa,
writ
that's what
large.
they're doing,
Yeah,
really?
And
So-
as I've pointed out repeatedly, it's not intended to be a permanent solution to anything, so, and we've committed to
that
coming
said.
back at a future time, so let's.
Yeah, but let's commit to that time, because it continues to be a problem.
A little bit,
Yes.
little bit of context. I was going to ask our planner, if you will, when someone wants to open up a daycare, and these are children, infants to to whatever 6, 7, 8. What kind of regulations or what kind of stipulations do they have to adhere to? Because they are,
State.
because they are holding children.
So under state law, if it's serving 8 children or less, then there's no interaction with the city for that. There's a state permitting process to run those. If it's more children than that, then those require a conditional use permit, which requires a planning commission hearing and approval from the commission.
But generally speaking, there has to be an extra, the design of the facility has to be geared toward the utmost amount in safety. And I'm wondering if all the little ins and
It is
outs
state.
that may be deficient in the state law that needs to be there, because they always dump that responsibility onto us, God bless their souls. But, like as Councilmember Leskern says, philosophically, I don't think anyone on the council is against the idea. But a law only works if it's written well and if it has the right language. And I know this city is not going to be ramrodded into something that it's going to be partial or legally like a piece of Swiss cheese. It's not going to work, and we are not going to give in to something like that. Now, if we have something that works well, if we have a location that's ideal, that's safe for all parties involved, then I think we're all going to be on board. But just to have something be passed through willy-nilly without much oversight or detail, that's going to be that's really going to protect the ones that we're trying to protect in the first place. I'm very leery of it.
Any other questions or comments, or any questions for Mr. Kelly? Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and the council. I'm just like a fly on the wall. I just want to know what's going on, but I was thinking,
If you could please state your name.
Armin Arambidi.
Thank you.
Got an idea from what the gentleman there was talking about. Does anybody live out Walnut Acres for those homeless? I'm talking about the women and children, not the addicts and like the lady was saying. As far as kids and women, if they're homeless, there's place over there. I know there's empty houses over there at that Walnut Acres, as far as that goes. And as far as the free food being given out, that's another place they can go to. Not to push everybody out of the town, but that's as good as area as any.
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Input
Yeah.
from the citizens. We never know what we're going to get,
Especially
right?
when it comes to addicts and little kids. My heart goes out to the kids, but there is an idea of getting them separated.
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Dennis McCord, live at 417 Sanderling here in Patterson, California. The first host house was actually out in the county, or tried to be out in the county, and with separate facilities, and the county didn't allow it. The facilities need to be in the cities, which is a problem, which was why the first host house wasn't able to continue, even though we were given property to use with separate facilities for families and for adults. There was several acres of land fenced off, separated. So while it's great to be able to do that, the county doesn't work for the county, and it doesn't work for SB2. So well, there's been a lot of community input. The host house would like to continue serving the youth with clothes and food and those kind of services. The way the ordinance is currently written would allow that. Feeding the homeless Tuesdays and Wednesdays down at the host house solves some of the city problems with the homeless being in the parks and at other people's homes. The host house is trying to be a good neighbor and help solve the problems. They're just looking for help from the city council so they can continue to do that. I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Mr. McCord, I just had a quick question. So the county, they have a policy that doesn't work for them, or is it a preference that it was articulated?
It was a $7,000 fee to start the process, and they told us very specifically that we would be denied since we were not in the city, and it was about 4 miles out to where this property was. I actually thought it was a decent place to start, but the county was very specific in that it was not, and they were not going to approve it.
So they have a process, but they said they wouldn't approve it.
Yep, they just said right up, you can pay us $7,000, but we're going to deny you.
It's interesting. Thank you very much.
So, no, I have a question, please, Mayor. So, to be clear, you are feeding, there are children that are coming onto your,
That would be, yes, I believe I've seen them feeding youth.
so let's talk
but
about
they're not
that.
housing anybody.
Is he going to address that with me?
Yes.
Sure, could I have you come up to the podium, please? Could I
Currently, Kirk Gross, 1426 Daisy Drive.
Kirk.
We currently allow the Trust in Jesus cuisine people and ourselves. We feed at the host house, not in the house, outside the house. And we do that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We also occasionally do the first Saturday of each month. And it's amazing to see how many women and small children show up for the feeding. It'll put a scar in your heart, I guarantee. One thing I wanted to put in a quick 2 cents, National Night Out, August 5th, the host house will be hosting an event there. And so hopefully y'all can come by, and whoever's has never had a chance to see the facility, we'll be giving you the official 5-cent tour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pamela Seacrest, 1426 Daisy Drive, board member of Host. And I just wanted to reassure the council that safety and security are very much a priority at the house. We have not come to the council asking for permission to house or in any way, take in as a client any minors. So this is something that's been, I feel, blown out of proportion from something that was mentioned in an article about our phase 2. Our phase 2 is so far in the future, it's not even on the horizon, okay? Like you said, we are working on being open again in the fall so that we can serve the clients that are needed here, the people that need to find the resources to get into rehab, to get into permanent housing. That's our goal. Of course, we don't want to have to exclude people from coming to our house that may be in need of food, families, the help that we give to the Jesus Cuisine people to offer them a location. It's all to-go boxes. We don't have picnic benches. We don't encourage them to eat there. In fact, we ask that they don't. So I just wanted to clear up those things. That we really are, number one, we are worried about security. We do have security on premises, and safety of our guests is very much a priority. Okay?
So when the children are coming over, and you mentioned the women and children, Kurt, so is security is present when the women, children, and the homeless are all?
Anytime the house is open.
So
there
when
is security
Jesus
there.
Cuisine is feeding over there?
No, it's somewhat a substitute for using the park. We are a substitute, so we are part of the rotation, as you were talking about in the city, that we are using our facility because we have a nice big driveway, that they are using our facility to hand out the food.
Right, and they're familiar with that, and they're familiar with
Right.
what you do, and so,
Right.
and I know I've even spoken about that this be a place where it continues, you know, because this is a place that they know of, and it will be consistent and not confused with the days, and those that have mental issues, well, which day is it, and where do we go with it? And those are some of my concerns, that not just from the city side, but from the people who they're helping. If we were to pass this ordinance, then those children and women, children, the women could not bring their children over to,
Could be served.
That's
not
what I'm
be
concerned
served.
with, is that
That's-
it could be read that way.
No.
They're not allowed
No,
on the
they
property.
could still have the lunches there, but then what I'm thinking about, when this was first passed to begin with, there was a concern about loitering as you were doing the intake.
Mhm.
And so, and the neighborhood was concerned about that as well, the neighborhood that surrounds Host House. So when the problem for, like, what are we going to do during Apricot Fiesta? We need to figure out how we're going to continue the services to give people the food, which is, I understand, you have to figure out these logistics. So when that happened, then you all decided to start doing that twice a week over at Host. But then again, that's where I'm saying, what happened to the neighborhood? Did anybody talk to them? Did they tell them, look, now we're going to have people loitering? And
No, I think actually the neighborhood will be some of the customers that are coming over and taking food, because there's a lot of families in that neighborhood that don't have food.
okay, so this ordinance is for the shelter of the children and families, correct?
Shelter also includes minimal supportive services in the definition.
Okay. Look, I know that you guys are looking for grants and that you want to include children in those grants so that you can get some more money.
That's not part of our grant writing at this point, because we are not a facility that is open to minors. We cannot apply for grants like that because we are not a facility that is open to minors.
So let me just interrupt real quick. So the premise of serving children under 18, we'll just say for now, is to give them the ancillary services that does not include shelter.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Then let's put that in the description.
That would make us, I think, a lot more comfortable with
that's
the
what I was,
change.
that's what I
Yes.
was trying to get to,
Yes,
is
yes.
that let's move forward with the compromise. There's always some compromise that we can come to, and all right, gentlemen, if you're comfortable, I don't know, I would feel more comfortable with that.
That's what I would support. That's
I think
what
we
would
would too.
We would support that as well.
Bravo.
Bravo.
So we'll bring it back with new
May I-
language.
May I recommend a sentence and see if that
Yeah.
works for you?
Okay, we're still in a public hearing, so is there anybody else who would like to make a comment on this particular item? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. So based on the comments I've heard, under section 1858-100, subsection B, which is operational standards, we could add a number 7 under that. which would be housing accommodations serving minors and families shall be physically separated from facilities serving only individuals over the age of 18. And that would allow a path for hosts to at some point have housing, but it would need to be separated. And that sounds like what the concern is from council.
I'm going to have you repeat that because I didn't get that down.
Go ahead and do that, and I have a question.
Okay. Housing accommodations serving minors and families shall be physically separated from facilities serving only individuals over the age of 18.
No, because then that still gives them the permission to go ahead and open a family shelter without coming back. Wouldn't it? Yes.
Yes.
Then that's not what we want.
Can we defer to the attorney for language?
Well, and before that, because I do have another question to add to that, I'll just say it, I don't believe the board or the members of HOST that came here today, and staff or any of us have been talking to, have plans to do that. And so I think that we're up here, and I'm turning to the attorney and say, what's our risk in this?
A lot.
Right? Well, that's the question that I think we need to ask overall. The relationship with people from HOST and the betterment of the well-being of people who are homeless and need ancillary services that include those with children, I think needs to be addressed. But I think, just as we just saw right now and heard, that there's an amicable agreement. What the detailed information or the sentence is, quite frankly, I think we're going to look over in this direction for help. We don't need to rush it, but we need to do it right. And so, the comments that have been made are well taken from the community, from HOST, from council. Just something that's agreeable, that takes care of everybody in terms of their risk, that we're all covered, and that we're working together for a better long-term solution.
I was going to come at it a different way. Our planner's recommendation was one way to do it. I had focused on just the definition of emergency shelter, but I then had a question for you all, and that is, one way to do what I heard the consensus was to take out with minimal supportive services. So then if you add an age restriction for shelter, meaning housing only, you'd still be able to provide the children with the other ancillary services.
Correct.
So I was not sure that was a compromise.
This discussion is certainly important. It's vital for us to move forward on this topic, but I really hope that we're not trying to wordsmith this tonight so we can pass it.
Right. I think we should wait and bring it back and
Exactly.
open it up to the
I
public
agree.
too.
That's certainly appropriate. If you could just give us your understanding of the compromise, just a kind of a shell to work with.
Well, I personally feel that the last part that you said about shelter would only be for those 18 and older, but ancillary services, not
Okay.
shelter for children that need
Okay.
that support.
I think the children need to be restricted from entering the home,
Yeah.
period,
Yeah, that includes the shelter.
until such time that the city passes the ordinance.
No.
Well, things can happen when children go in there. I mean, something can happen just as easy as going to the bathroom. Okay, no.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that.
You know, what I hear right now, at least majority, if not all the council, is that we bring this back in our August meeting and wordsmith it then, make sure that council weighs in on that and bring it back, but the language is clear.
If I could
just
just,
want to hear from other council members.
do we have consensus on the age restriction? Is that
Yes.
what I'm hearing?
18 and over only.
Okay.
For shelter.
For shelter.
Okay. Now, for the ancillary services, children would obviously have to come on the premises for most of that. So did we also want to eliminate that?
No, I think the part of the premises that we were looking at was that they provide the meals, which they're describing, that the women and children are coming over for that. So I think that's.
Okay.
Let me respectfully interrupt. Also, clothing and other ancillary services. Referrals possibly, but not just, we're going to give you food, but if they need clothes, maybe they need family counseling or so forth. They're not equipped to do that, but they have partners and resources they can refer that family with children to. Is that correct?
And it's my understanding
Go ahead.
that Health and Human Services and the schools are currently doing that.
Kurt Gross again. Unfortunately, Center for Human Services and the schools don't do behavioral counseling on a grander scale that involve families.
No, they
I know
do.
that I've spoken several times with behavioral.
They connect them with the services. They do just what you're saying. They find the services and point them in the right direction.
Let me rephrase that. By preventing children from entering the facility at all, what about when we're off hours and having behavioral services from Stanislaus County come over and be able to do, family counseling? Or what about the client that's staying at our house and he's been homeless and he's trying to reconnect with his children? It'd be nice to be able to have his son or daughter come over and have a meal, and then they're back out to their other folk. I mean, it's drawing a line in the sand is I understand your concern for the safety. That's why we have security on site by your mandate. And I think we're really doing a disservice to our people.
But you need to have you need to have the licensed people that deal with children when it concerns children like that. So I would suggest, until you get further, into the process, that you have that client meet with their child at McDonald's or something for the safety of everybody.
Okay, I'd like to see your credentials for your services, for what you're recommending.
I was elected by the city, by the Patterson residents.
I guess that satisfies
Okay,
that.
let's not go there. We made some progress, one
Yes, we
step
did.
forward, two steps back. So this is a conversation that needs to remain civil and move forward, or I'm going to recommend that we end it.
I agree, but seriously though, it's a matter of if we word this incorrectly, we are going to be precluding services for a lot of folks, and I just really don't want to see that. Sheltering, obviously not, but the other services, I think it's very important. So that's all. Thank you.
I got a question, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Wiener.
In the wintertime, when the shelter's open, it is a it's shelter at night,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
And the meals that we're talking about is daytime lunch.
That's during the
Separate.
daytime lunch. In the evening meals that we provide when the shelter is open, anybody that, we serve our people in the house first, but there's always plenty of other people that come to the front door asking if we have extra food. And quite often, that is women and children. Or a family that comes up. We, either the husband or the wife, or, the male or the female, might opt to stay at the shelter so they can have a shower, while the other spouse element takes the kid off to wherever it is they sleep. I want to at least be able to feed them.
Yeah.
And give them clothing or blankets, whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
That's it.
I'm sorry I was late. I've been having some back trouble, but I just wanted to let you know what's going on with I'm Claudia Smith from 530 Tarlin Lane. I'm the coordinator for the lunch, and we have been using the host house out 2 days a week for the park, the outside part of the house, to serve lunch. And I just wanted to let you know that we have when I drove by today, there were about 15 kids there with about 3 moms that come in the summertime when there is when there's no school. So we don't just serve the homeless, we serve families. And so if you want us to be able to serve them, we need to be able at least to be outside. We were just outside with the house being closed up. So I don't want to lose that ability to do that, because we've had a very hard time, in finding some place that we can serve besides the North and South Park. And I've been trying to honor that by finding other places. So please don't let us lose the host house for during the day.
Prior to you coming here, I think we head in that direction.
I do have a question for you, though.
Okay.
Have you told those families that they still provide lunches and breakfasts over at the schools?
Yes, today I'd given them the flyer because they, especially so they can come get breakfast.
Right.
Some of them don't have cars, so it depends on where they live. And I think part of the reason why they still want to come with us is for lunch, is because they can walk the kids over there, but then for the kids to eat and for them to get back to parents can eat. If they don't have a car, it gets pretty tricky. And so we don't push them away just because there's another place for the kids. We honor that they need to come too, because the adults need to eat too. The parents need to eat as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to them as to whether they go for just breakfast or breakfast and lunch, and then the parents eat. Okay.
Are the schools doing this all year, or mainly just when school's in session?
They do it all year.
They do it all year. There are about 2 months, I think there's about 2 weeks at the beginning of the summer and about 2 weeks at the end when they don't serve that. And so they absolutely would have to come with us, but it seems to work better for them to come and for the moms to eat as well when they just come with us.
Okay, and so as of right now, Claudia, and
Yeah.
thank you for coming, and even though you're in pain, I appreciate it. You're not letting the mothers or children in right now?
Not inside. We don't
Thank
do
you.
anything inside with the lunch.
Okay,
We
and they're
just-
fine with that right now?
Okay, great. Thank you.
No, that was a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was
That's
late.
okay, that's okay. I talk fast sometimes, and they're okay with that right now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so, Mr. Hallinan?
I think I got it. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
If it's not, I know I'll find out.
okay. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and continue the,
Yeah, we do need a motion to continue it to a date certain, so you don't have to renotice it again.
so I'll move that we continue this public hearing to a future date.
August 12th?
And
Yeah, the next meeting is August 12th. That will be a special meeting, so I don't know if that creates any
okay.
issues.
my question
The
was-
5th, right?
No.
No, National Night Out.
Oh,
We agreed to do that.
We can introduce an ordinance, we just can't pass it or have it second reading.
So we
at
can
a
agendize for
special
that
meeting.
because it needs a second reading anyway, right? Okay. So I move that we continue this public hearing in this item to a future date, would be a special meeting on Tuesday, August 12th, 2014.
Second?
A second by Mayor Pro Tem Lustgarten. This requires a roll call. Mr. Beener?
Aye.
Councilman Beener, excuse me. Councilmember Farina?
All right.
Councilmember Novelli?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lustgarten?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye.